Good Monday afternoon. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love CVille show. It's great to be with you. We're live in Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille network. Thank you kindly for joining us. You, the viewer, can interact with the show by sharing your perspective on any of the comments, sections that you're watching the show upon. We ask if you can like and share the show and tell your buddies. That would mean the world to us. Today's show is loaded with information. We have expanded the I Love CVille show from 12:30 to 2 o'clock because of the obscene amount of content and news that we have to relay to you on a daily basis. We also hear very positive feedback from you about how you're approaching and absorbing this show and how it's now your go-to resource for news in our community, and it warms our hearts. We work very hard on the program. The only thing we ask for our sweat equity and our hard work is if you give the show a like and a share. So if you could do that now, that would really mean a lot to me. Today's show, I'll give you a quick rundown before we give you the first headline. On Friday's show, the city manager resigned. Surprisingly, I was getting text messages from inside City Hall saying, Jerry, bring this news to your viewers' attention. They need to know what really is happening here inside City Hall. We're going to talk about that resignation. We're going to talk about the fact that Mayor Nikiah Walker is negotiating interim contracts as we speak for John Blair, who's going to be the interim city manager. Also, for the new city lawyer, the city attorney. Remember, John Blair was the previous city attorney. Now the previous city attorney is the interim city manager, and the previous deputy city attorney is now the number one city attorney. So Charlottesville, Virginia is in a tremendous financial crunch. If the city of Charlottesville was run like a business, this business would be failing and approaching bankruptcy. The city of Charlottesville not only does not have money for police, for EMTs, for teachers, for fire, for schools, for rescue, for roads, but they're now paying 3 city managers, literally 3 and maybe 4, just to go away. So we'll talk about that on the show. We'll talk about the fact that everybody is getting pay bumps. The city attorney has got a 10% increase in pay to be the interim city manager. The number 2, Lisa Robertson, the deputy city lawyer, who's now the interim city attorney, the number 1, she got a 10% pay bump. So, it's just shenanigans. If I could equate this municipality to a business, and I'm a businessman, own a handful of companies, as you guys know, on this show, across real estate, across advertising, across digital and social media. And if this municipality was run as a city, you would have city council as the board of directors, and you would have the city manager as the chief executive officer of the company. The board of directors in a business is chaired by a chairman or a chairwoman. And that chairman or chairwoman in the city of Charlottesville, that's Mayor Nikiah Walker. The CEO of the city is the city manager. It was Dr. Richardson. It's now interim City Manager John Blair. Also on the board, Councilor Hill, Councilor Snook, Councilor McGill, Councilor Payne. So 5 people on the board. One of them is the chairwoman, that's Mayor Walker, and then you have a CEO that's the city manager. So I want you to absorb that structure as we break this down. Let me table that for 1 second so I can offer the other tidbits that the other news we're going to be talking about today. Today is so loaded with information. In Albemarle County schools, 717 students sprinted for the door, hit the road jack, fled the school system. 717. Now remember, from a funding standpoint, public schools are funded based on enrollment. They get $3,000 per kid from the Commonwealth. 3 bills, 3K, 3,000 from the Commonwealth per kid. So quick math right here on my trusty calculator, 717 times $3,000, $2,151,000 more of a revenue shortfall. That's on top of the revenue shortfall that already happened because of COVID-19 and because of lodging and retail and hospitality, taxes all down. So we already were operating in a budget deficit because of COVID-19. On top of that, we compound the budget deficit by losing $2,150,000 on top of the money that was already shortfall. So any other show, that is the lead of the program. But not in Charlottesville. In Charlottesville, it's paying city managers, people not getting along with council, and really just tomfoolery, shenanigans, and straight up bickering. So we'll talk about that on the show. How about this? The number 3 story, actually it's the number 4 story on today's rundown, is the UVA and Virginia Tech game was postponed on Saturday. Any other show, the UVA and Virginia Tech game being postponed because of COVID, is the lead of the program. On today's show, because of where we at, what is it? Is it 4 on the rundown, J-Dubs? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 6 on the rundown. On screen, look at the rundown. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's number 6. Also on today's program, the demise and collapse of print. The Daily Progress, the Roanoke Times, and the Richmond Times Dispatch are owned by one parent company, Lee Enterprises. Lee Enterprises is stripping the newspaper of its most valuable parts, which is its writers, its human capital, the people that actually create the news. They are giving them 2 weeks, saying, here's 2 weeks of pay, leave, you're no longer employed here. And we will dissect and analyze this very topic. In a COVID-19 landscape, September 14th, 2020, is it the 14th, Judah?
It's the 14th.
September 14th, 2020, in a COVID-19 landscape, we have city council and a city manager in a city unable to coexist and get along. We have an Albemarle County school system that just lost 717 students. We have roughly 20% vacancy or no tenants in place on the Charlottesville Downtown Mall. We have 5th Street Station, Stonefield, and Barracks Road hemorrhaging tenants. We had food, lodging, retail, and straight-up tax revenue in the pooper. And yet our daily newspaper is having its parts stripped by its parent company so it can make a little jack, a little green, a little money. The time in our lives where we need a daily paper of record, and it's now becoming a shadow of its former self. COVID is creating a collision of a lot of poop, and it's all happening at one time. So we will dissect that on the show. We will dissect Oracle buying TikTok, not Microsoft, not Walmart, Oracle buying TikTok, the Chinese social media app. That'll come up on the program. How about 10 African-American quarterbacks starting on week 1 in the National Football League, the most in NFL history, and New York City Sports Club is filing for bankruptcy. That is a sign of other gyms closing their doors. It trickles from the Big Apple down to smaller communities like ours. Welcome to the I Love CVille show. My name is Jerry Miller. We'll save $288 on Ting Fiber Internet, Judah, through that link on screen, ilovecville.ting.com. Guys, it is the best internet possible, Ting. And we have it at the lowest price possible only through this link, ilovecville.ting.com. And J-Dubs, a little love for Interstate Pest and Service Companies. Woo! Interstate Pest and Service Companies, a home's best friend. This company takes care of us, takes care of my building, our rental properties, the best of the best. We work alongside Interstate Pest and Service Companies. J-Dubs, let's cut to the chase. And guys, before we do the rundown, like the show, hammer the like button, share it right now. Rick Postle's going to join us in T-minus 12, 13 minutes. This dude is like 007, straight up James Bond, man. Let me give you a taste of 007 Rick Postle, the Charlottesville version of James Bond. This guy was the president of the United States, President USA of Wendy's International, President USA Wendy's International. He was a chief operating officer with Kentucky Fried Chicken, currently owns 16 Panera Breads, and I found out moments ago he's an international marathon runner at over 70 years old. And perhaps my favorite thing about the Rick Postle interview is he loves dad jokes. I'm a dad. I love dad jokes. Maybe we'll get a dad joke or two from 007. Keith Smith to give us an update on real estate, and Rob Schilling of the Schilling Show to break down City Hall like only Rob Schilling can. This show is locked and loaded. Judah Wickhauer, headline number 1, get it on screen, get it on screen, get it on screen. Dr. Richardson peacing out at the end of September. Interim City Manager John Blair starts October 1, and bing, bam, boom, the city of Charlottesville, at bare minimum, in the month of October, will be paying Mike Murphy, Dr. Richardson, and John Blair a city manager's wage. That's 3 heavy hitters making serious bank at a time we don't have money to pay teachers. Think about that. Dr. Richardson, when you think about his total compensation package, cash money, health care, when you think about his total compensation package, including vacation time and days off not used, I mean, this dude's getting $300,000 roughly just to get the hell out of Dodge. He works 16 months. He takes his family from Texas, brings his family from Texas, and brings them to Charlottesville, Virginia, works only 16 months, not even 16 months, and then resigns. My phone blows up during Friday's show from people at desks inside City Hall saying, Jerry, you have to understand what is happening in here. Please tell your viewers about this. I mean, where do you begin? You have a city that is perhaps, from a morale, happiness, temperature standpoint, I would say the morale is low. You have a city manager in Dr. Richardson that was picked by 5 counselors at the time: Heather Hill, Nakia Walker, Mike Signer, Kathy Galvin, and Wes Bellamy. Those 5 counselors picked Dr. Richardson and moved him from Texas to take the job in Charlottesville. No one can argue with that. There's 2 of them that remain on council, Hill and Walker. There's one of them that's the mayor, Walker. She's the chairman of the board. And if you watch any meeting, you understand her incredible influence to the point where there's a counselor that's in my building in Lloyd Snook who I watch on screen just look intimidated and scared of her. Certainly Heather Hill. Payne and McGill are just quiet. Payne was her campaign manager when Walker ran for council. Mayor Walker also, to add to her incredible power and influence in this town, Mayor Walker negotiated, put it on screen. Rob Schilling dug this up through a Freedom of Information Act. Put it on screen. Headline 2, look at the screen. Look at the screen. Read the screen. What you need to look at when you're looking at the screen is the bottom paragraph. Be it further resolved by the Council of City of Charlottesville, Virginia, that it hereby authorizes Mayor Nakia Walker to negotiate and execute employment agreements with Mr. Blair and Ms. Robertson for servicing as acting city manager and acting city attorney. All right, so I'm just going to do common sense commentary. Are you back on me, J-Dubs?
Yep.
All right, common sense commentary, okay? The chairwoman of the board, Mayor Nakia Walker, and this is all fact, I'm going to leave my opinion out of it. The chairwoman of the board, Mayor Nakia Walker, she herself is negotiating the employment contracts with John Blair, who was formerly the city attorney and now is the interim city manager. She herself is negotiating the employment contracts with Ms. Robertson, Lisa Robertson, who is the deputy city lawyer and is now filling in for John as the city attorney, the number one. So you already have one person who is punch drunk with power, who is in a silo negotiating contracts with two people who will run the law and interpret the law of the city, Lisa Robertson, and run day-to-day operations as the city, and John Blair. Do we think, as intelligent human beings, that interim city manager John Blair and interim city lawyer Lisa Robertson will go against the person that negotiated their contracts and gave them each 10% raises? Hell no! Take it a step further. I've said this so many times on this show. John Blair is a friend of mine. John Blair, for what it's worth, and someone tell John Blair, John, I sincerely mean this. John Blair is a friend of mine. John Blair is the best city employee we have. He was the second highest paid city employee behind Dr. Richardson. Now he's number one. John Blair is as good as it gets, just a real nice guy, a super intelligent person, a family man, a kind person. John is salt of the earth. I love John Blair. It is important to emphasize that John Blair lives in Albemarle County. He does not live in the city of Charlottesville. Now, I've been told from an interim standpoint, it is okay if the city manager who is working in an interim role can live in Albemarle County. However, it is clear as day in the bylaws that the city manager must live in the city if he's full-time. So I'm going to try to wrap a bow on this. Good God, it's 12:51 and I have 007 coming up in 4 minutes. This is why we need 2 hours, 3 hours. And Judah's scratching his head. Good Lord, he's going to do this. Guys, we have a former city attorney who sprinted from City Hall. We have a former police chief who sprinted from City Hall before Chief Brackney got in. We have Mike Murphy, who clearly says the workings inside City Hall are dysfunctional at best. We have Dr. Richardson, who is sprinting from City Hall despite moving his family from Texas. To say it's dysfunctional is to say Brian Austin Green and Megan Fox have a bad marriage. And from my standpoint, eventually, this dysfunctionality and this responsibility must fall on the feet of the chairwoman of the board. In any other company, I trade stocks and equities on an active basis. It's becoming one of our go-to revenue streams as we diversify our earning potential, as we diversify our portfolio across real estate, stocks and equities, an advertising agency, and a network that's become number one in the community. 4 different revenue streams. Stocks and equities, real estate, 27 tenants. In any company that I invest in, if the chairwoman of the board had this kind of dysfunctionality, Wall Street, the analysts that cover Wall Street, and the investors that put their money where we bust our tails to make and then invest into businesses that we trust because we think their balance sheets and their financials are in order. In any of those companies I put my money in, the chairwoman of the board would be pink-slipped. This is not about race. This is about piss-poor management. This is not about race. This is about piss poor policy. This is not about race. This is about not getting along with people. This is not about race. This is about ruling with an iron fist, with a tenacious mindset that is creating a divide in a community that I love so dearly. Eventually, we must hold leadership accountable, just like the city managers have been held accountable. And I say enough is enough. I'm going to table, guys, 24 minutes in. I still need to talk 717 kids leaving Albemarle County schools. I need to analyze if public school systems are on the brink of collapse. Dude, if we continue down the road of virtual learning, and as people become more comfortable learning virtually, why would we return to antiquated schools, antiquated hallways with poor ventilation that are not cleaned appropriately, that, frankly speaking, cost significant amounts of money to upkeep? We told you about Pinterest in San Francisco paying their landlord $89.5 million to get out of its lease because the work in an office setting is becoming the T-Rex extinct something of the past. Is that not the future for learning in a poorly ventilated school that's not cleaned properly, that costs a hell of a lot of money to upkeep? That story and topic coming up. The University of Virginia, the number 26 best college in America, number 4 from a public school standpoint. UVA and Virginia Tech game gets postponed. Oracle's buying TikTok. 10 black quarterbacks start NFL Week 1, the most in history. And New York City Sports Club filing for bankruptcy. We are on fire on the I Love CVille show. Rick Postle coming up, 007 himself. I'm rigging 007 right now, Judah Wickower. I'm excited to talk to this man. We have him on screen. Rick, if we could get that camera turned on so we can see that handsome face, we can see that sleek physique, a 71-year-old international marathon runner. There he is. He's looking super sharp. You are live for a heck of a lot of people. Thank you kindly for joining us, sir.
Great to be here. I feel pretty grateful that I'm not one of those top news items you've just been covering.
Well, you're going to give us a glimmer of hope here because your resume speaks for itself. We will not talk politics with this accomplished businessman. Instead, we will talk the flip book of his life. Sir, if you could first give us an introduction to who you are.
Yeah, sure. Well, first I'm going to start with my family, the most important part, right? So my wife and I just celebrated 42 years of marriage last week. We have 2 lovely daughters. Both of them have been in our business. One of them still is in the business, one retired. 4 lovely grandchildren. 2 great son-in-laws. One of them runs our business today. And the other one has a great business on his own. So grateful for that. I guess the 2 areas that are kind of interesting career-wise, because I'm not going to go through all the details and blah, blah, blah. Everybody get bored out of their socks. But the 2 that are kind of fun are, I started in this industry about 50 years ago. I started with a guy named Dave Thomas, who is the founder of Wendy's,
Love
right?
Wendy's.
Yeah, and I started with Dave when he had 5 Wendy's hamburger shops. And was lucky enough to work with him for 16 years. We grew the chain to about 3,000 shops, and then I went on to run some interim businesses. But I landed I guess it's about 25 years ago. I was recruited to go in and run a little bakery cafe chain in Missouri called St. Louis Bread Company. There were 20 stores. They'd just been purchased from their founder. And so I went in and had an opportunity to run that. I served as president of that company for about 10 years. We changed the name from St. Louis Bread Company to Panera Bread, as you all know it today, and hopefully all love it or fond of it. And then I guess it's been, 15 years ago now, our girls said, let's start a family business. So Rosemary and I, my wife Rosemary and I, looked at each other and said, why not, right? We've been doing the corporate thing for years. So we started a family franchise that we grew to 29 bakery cafes in Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi. We did sell 13 of the ones in the western states last year. So we now have 16 Panera Breads scattered throughout the western part of Virginia. Headquartered right here in Charlottesville. Love it. Wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Fabulous city, fabulous community. In spite of a little bit of turmoil right now, but that'll get settled out and we'll be fine.
So this guy's big time here, and I'm saying this, he's a humble man. I'm saying this guy, we got a 007 living here in the community. Dave Thomas, you said you started with a handful of burger stands. And
right.
then you scale this business globally, and when you leave the company, I believe you said it was 3,000. Give us some early Dave Thomas stories. I mean, give us some good stuff here, Rick.
Sure. Well, everybody wants to know why did we have square hamburgers, right? Yeah, the truth of the matter is, Dave was a really slick marketing guy, and up to that point in time, all hamburgers were essentially round, and probably today most still are, right? And so he came up with the idea, said, well, we're not going to cut corners. And the way I'm going to demonstrate that is I'm going to have a square hamburger, right? Yeah. The name came from one of his 4 daughters, Wendy. So that's a legitimate person. In fact, we'd like to get her on. Our daughter, Kelly Postle Jackson, has a podcast on your network. And we'd like to get Wendy Thomas Morris on that podcast. I think she'd be a lot of fun to talk about the early days of Wendy's, he was just a terrific guy. He is probably the most genuine, caring executive that I've ever been around. And always very sharing. Gave his young people great opportunity to work and stretch themselves. And he gave them compensation via stock options, right? We were a little company, so you didn't have a lot of cash to do in salaries, but he gave out stock options, and he made a lot of people pretty wealthy by his generosity and his sharing. So just a terrific guy all the way around.
When you take a company that has a handful of locations and you scale it to the magnitude that you guys had done, I'm a businessman here. I love hearing entrepreneurial success stories. I like hearing the stories that aren't successful because it gives me perspective as well. Did you think it had like that it or that secret sauce? What did you see in this company?
Are you talking about Wendy's now?
Yes.
Yeah, well, actually, one of the things about an entrepreneur is you've got to be a risk taker, right? And you got to have a lot of luck. And I was just lucky enough to see in the Wendy's, it was different. Now this is going to be hard to believe. Now you got to go. Most of our viewers can't go back 50 years, right? They weren't even born. They probably weren't even thought of 50 years ago, right? Certainly you.
I was not.
Right? Yeah. So at the time, there was fast food, casual dining, and fine dining, and there weren't very many big chains. I think McDonald's at the time maybe had 500 or 600 restaurants, right? There's no Starbucks, there is no Paneras, there is no Chipotles. Fast food didn't have any drive-thrus. And all the furniture was plastic. And everything came off of a holding bin. It was pre-made, and you just packaged it up and served it, right? Well, the thing that made Wendy's different was it had a drive-through window. So we pioneered the drive-through windows. The hamburgers were cooked to order, fresh meat, not frozen meat. Everybody else had frozen meat. It was fresh meat, made to order. And then our dining room had actually carpet in it. It had these beads that everybody accused us of, pardon my expression, it looked like a house of ill repute. I was going to use the H house word.
Yeah.
But it was like, for them, that was kind of breakthrough then. I was like, wow, this place is really decorated. So it had uniqueness in it, But I'll tell you, you talked about stories and failures and successes. I'll just throw this little tidbit out there. This is kind of a fun story about when I went to St. Louis Bread Company. So we wanted to franchise. There was no franchise program. So we wanted to franchise. And honestly, we knew we had to franchise because after buying the company, the investors ran out of money. And so we had no money to really grow the business. So if we were going to grow, we had to develop a franchise company. So having spent prior to that 25, 30 years in the franchise business, I got my Rolodex out and started calling people. Rolodex, nobody knows what a Rolodex is.
Rick.
We didn't have smartphones back then. This is really back in almost horse and buggy time, right? And I start calling people, and I'm going, okay, I'm at this new little bakery cafe, and they go, whoa, what is a bakery cafe? I go, well, it's got a little bakery, we have coffee, we have some, pastries, and then we serve some sandwiches, and salads. And they go, okay, well, I've never really heard those or seen those. So what is it? And I said, well, it's called St. Louis Bread Company. They go, oh, great. Okay, well, call me when you have 500 or 600 of them, and I'll come see you. So honestly, I was almost like I was selling door to door, with my toolkit of trying to find people who would want to come in and join the company. And I found a couple who had worked with me before. One when I was president of Checkers, franchisee there, jumped on board. Once when I was back at Wendy's, a franchisee there, jumped on board. We still didn't get much momentum until we started then meeting other people. They'd introduced me to a member at the golf club, right? He'd introduced me to a friend of his, and next thing you know, we had, 2,000 Panera Breads. But it started off as a really slow, small little company that, it had to almost beg people to come get a franchise. People I think see it today, they say, it's 2,000 stores. It's always been great, been successful. It's always had, $3 million sales averages. Oh no, we had like $1.2 million as our sales average back then, So it's part of the process of growing a business. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 1 back. Hopefully it's not 1 forward and 2 back,
Right.
Now that leads me to today. I don't know, you want to talk about COVID?
Please.
You want to talk about restaurants in Charlottesville? And okay, let me give you a look under the covers, and I'll be real candid about this, and share some numbers with everybody. So I define, I guess, this COVID period right now for us, and I think this is probably true of the restaurants in Charlottesville and throughout Virginia, into maybe 4 blocks, right? So the first 60 days, I would say, I'd define it like as an unmitigated disaster, total disaster. The second 60 days, a big disaster, okay? The third 60 days that we just kind of completed, because we're now 6 months into it, I call it improved to maybe just a disaster now, right? Now, the question is where the next 60 days is going to go. And if you think of those first 60 days, we were all losing our shirts. Our sales were down 80%. 80%. You can't even pay the dishwasher, hardly. But and so that was really scratching and clawing. The PPP loan saved restaurants and saved many businesses. Many of us wouldn't be here today providing jobs for all the people that we hire and work with, nor would we be able to serve the wonderful customers we have if it hadn't been for the government stepping in with this, CARES Act and the PPP loan process. So that allowed us to kind of bridge from a unmitigated disaster to a big disaster, right? Sales got a little bit better. We pivoted and learned how to deal differently with it. We introduced curbside. Our digital platform gave us better access to our loyal base of customers. Our people were fabulous. And I think this goes for probably any industry, and certainly in the restaurant industry. There have been so many unknowns thrown to us, shutting down stores totally, people getting sick and having to, segregate them and stay away, and business channels going kaput, and having to recreate ways to serve customers in a safe environment when you can't open your dining rooms, right? It took a lot of creativity an awful lot of hard work and loyalty, and a ton of flexibility. I mean, I can't give enough credit to all of our people for the way they've worked, and we've all pulled ourselves together through this, So we did curbside. That's helped a whole lot. That's one of the positive outcomes, I think, of this disastrous environment, business and personal, that we've all lived in, right? Is there's a new channel of business service providing, and that's curbside. And I'm sure that that's going to stay with us forever. We'll continue to invest in that, as I think as will, probably every other restaurant who has the capability geographically or site-wise to do that. It's a big deal now, right? So that helped pull us through that new channel, helped pull us through from a mitigated just to a big disaster, right? Now, we moved from a big disaster to a disaster, getting better, primarily because universities and students started coming back, and this applies to our particular business. We happen to service 4 of the major universities in the state: UVA, Virginia Tech, JMU, Liberty, and we've got 7 or 8 other Division I and II kind of schools, nice-sized schools that we work with. So we're very college-oriented. So when colleges were in school, we really struggled, right? Now, colleges came back, as we all know, a few weeks ago, and our sales got better. Not to break even, we're getting close, right? And then you go, okay, now maybe there's an opportunity as we go forward now that we can maybe get to a break-even point of view. Now, you ever been into business? You ever heard a businessman say, my goal was to get to break even? Never.
Only in 2020.
Only in 2020. I've been in business for 50 years. I never thought I would see anything like this, But that's our goal today. So, students come back, business starts to come back a little bit better, and then bingo, what happens? JMU, big breakout of the virus. All of a sudden now, in-person classes go to virtual, and they want to send the students home. So now we start to look at the fourth quarter here, and you go, whew, what happens if UVA, Virginia Tech, if all these other colleges get those kind of outbreaks and students leave? Now, that's where it gets to the heart, because I know you've talked a lot about restaurants in Charlottesville and how badly they've been hurt. This gets to the heart of all of us, and I'm thinking here almost more of my kinsman in the restaurant industry, right? You look at how much we rely on UVA. It really is the engine that stokes us, our sales. We already know that because of COVID, we aren't going to get a lot of the fall action, right? We're not going to have football games. We're not going to have what? We're not going to have alumni gatherings, no homecoming, no concerts. So a lot of the weekend stuff that we would normally have and drive sales isn't. So we know we're going to have a tough time. So we got to hope that the students stay in and that we don't get a big surge again in the virus, with the flu season and cold season coming on. We're all hearing all these warnings, If those 2 ifs occur on the positive side, we're all going to be okay. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult. So.
You're a popular guy.
Okay.
I think someone's watching you on the show right here, over there. Let me throw this to you here. 2-part question, okay? And I'm saying this, you're not saying this. When you're on the ground floor of some big-time brands like you have been on, you have vision, you have chutzpah, you have cojones, you're willing to take risk. I think you embody all those qualities. So this is the 2-part question. What do we think is the future of a restaurant moving forward? The second part of the question is, if the future of the restaurant is a curbside drive-through model because people are fearful of eating inside, how do we think that's going to impact major Class A real estate?
Yeah, great questions. Those questions, I think, are in all of our minds. And we're trying to sort through our strategies now. This is not one where I think you say, well, it all depends. It doesn't all depend on what's going to happen. We know that sooner or later we're going to work our way out of COVID, right? And so is it going to happen in the next 6 months? No, probably not. if we can be profitable by the end of next year as a restaurant industry, we probably will have recovered. Now, I think a couple things have occurred in this. There are new customer expectations, number one, and most importantly. Safety was never an issue that any of us, it was always on our minds, of course. We're serving food, and we have a lot of rigorous controls and audits and methodologies to maintain food safety. But from a customer's point of view, that wasn't something that they spoke of highly. Convenience was important, but it was like fourth or fifth on the priority list. Today, safety and convenience are the two driving factors in the restaurant industry from a consumer perspective. They're the two demands. I don't think that's going to change. I think the safety is always going to be there. So we're always going to have to maintain real vigilance. I don't know how long we'll wear masks, but after we get out of COVID and we have some type of antidote or something to help, maybe if it doesn't prevent it, at least cure it, so the effects are not as devastating, we're still going to have a strong safety issue. The convenience is clearly going to stay there. And I think customers, this catapulted us in the restaurant industry even more into the digital age. We probably lag behind retail from a digital point of view. And many of us who had the resources and the foresight to develop digital platforms had been working on those for the last 2 years. Fortunately, we have that. We've got a very vibrant and vigorous digital platform. So we can do contactless. We can do order by phone. We can do pickup. We can do curbsides. That's what customers are going to continue to want to do. If you have a drive-through, it's an even bigger advantage, right? We're going to see more of that. Now, we may not necessarily see sales increase, but you're going to see those channels grow. The loser in all this is going to be in cafe seating, exactly. Right? So, to your question, the way we think about it in our restaurants is we will be reshuffling our portfolio, our real estate portfolio, and we will be moving to smaller spaces that have a drive-through. Today, many of our cafes are 5,000 square feet in line with a patio attached. We'll probably drop that 60%, 40%. I mean, we'll be at 60% of probably where we were in terms of space. And if it doesn't have a drive-through, we're probably not going to be interested in it. So the next generation of real estate is going to be smaller and have more access to play to the convenient demand from customers. So we will not see the restaurant industry again like we have in my generation. This next generation of real estates, my son-in-law and the younger people that are running the businesses today, it's going to be a whole different world.
All right, you're killing this. I would love to pick your brain again because you're dropping tremendous knowledge here for our viewers. Why don't we close with this question? We're a platform of hope, so maybe a message of hope from you. Before we get to the message of hope, your advice, because I'm watching the live here, you have 13, I'll call them local restaurant owners, mom and pop restaurant owners watching you right now in Charlottesville. So two-part question, your advice to the local, and you guys are local too, but the one unit owner that's relying on in-person sit-down dining and average tickets that are maybe $100 and they're selling an experience to justify those prices. What's the advice you offer them? They don't have the burn rate you guys have. So the advice you offer them, and then a message of hope for Charlottesville and Central Virginia and anybody who else is watching across the world, Rick.
Sure. Well, number one, let me say that anybody in the restaurant industry, or for that matter, anybody in business or just in life that wants to chat, go see Jerry. And Jerry, please give him my contact information. I mean, I've done that an awful lot over the years. I've worked with young or small entrepreneurs trying to grow a business and trying to get started and think about their business, So I wish I had a silver bullet that I could give you for those restaurateurs who are, God bless them. It's the backbone of our industry, and I have such admiration for them. And I want to tell you, I am really devastated, and all of our families very concerned about the downtown mall. It is our first choice, go-to choice whenever we want to go out to eat. We love the environment. We love the cultural aspects. We love the energy it brings to our community. We so all of the restaurateurs down there and enjoy them so much. And it's just heartbreaking to see the for lease signs coming up. I ran down there the other day, and there were I counted 12 for lease spaces right there in the mall in that 4-block area. It's just really devastating. So I would say, look, you know your business better than anybody, right? And you probably know your customers best. Your best shot, any of our best shot at success, is building a stronger, closer relationship to our heavy users, our loyal customers. Know who they are, have a way to contact them. Hopefully they have their emails and they can send out email messaging and digital communication and build a relationship that way. And communicate with them and let them know how much you appreciate them, how much you need them, right? And then put some meal bundles together, that maybe off meal specials that I'm giving just to you as my special loyal people, or, if you have to do some discounting, nobody likes to particularly discount, but work with your core users, and those loyal customers. They're the ones that you got to hang on to, and find ways to put your arms around them. And I'd be honest with them. I just say, we need you now. Please come see us, Yeah. And a message of hope. Well, listen, we're going to get through this. And I think that many of the positives that will come from this are yet to be seen and discovered. There are going to be many opportunities. And you hate to take advantage of someone else's disadvantage. But there are going to be many opportunities that will spring from this. There'll be real estate opportunities. There'll be opportunities to invest in other restaurants, to help other people. And I think that if people keep their nose to the grindstone, as we always say, keep your powder dry. In this case, that means keep your cash, right?
Yeah.
Keep your cash, and if you can stay in business, there's going to be opportunities. Because I think that what will happen, it's a good news, bad news story. The bad news is we're going to lose restaurants. The good news is it will rebalance the supply and demand of restaurants. Charlottesville got over-restauranted. There are frankly too many restaurants in Charlottesville for everybody to succeed. And I believe what we saw in the first 60 to 90 days of this pandemic was those who were barely hanging on, this kind of separated them and they had to leave. And I feel terrible, especially if as an entrepreneur. God, putting your life at risk and your family at risk financially is a terrible thing, But, hey, so I think that there will be a rebalancing of supply and demand. And I think for those of us that hang on and work our way through this, there'll be bigger opportunities when we all come out of this.
You're a rock star, man. You are an absolute, I seriously mean that, you are a rock star. 007 of Charlottesville, Virginia. May I welcome you back on here, Rick?
Sure. Anytime. It's fun.
I thoroughly enjoyed it, sir. You have a good day.
My pleasure.
Take care. Rob Schilling is coming up in 2 minutes. Rob Schilling in 2 minutes. Keith Smith, if you're watching, we're going to see if we can weave you in here at about 1:40 for you, Keith Smith. 1:40 if you're around. If not, I understand completely, sir. 1:40 if you can do that. That was a phenomenal interview with a phenomenal guy. I'm going to give my 2 cents before I get to Rob, and I'm going to go to Rob here very quickly. I've been in business for myself for almost 13 years. Wake up, figure out how you're going to make a buck, pay your mortgages, feed your kid, feed your wife, keep your team members getting, he'll attest to this, close to 10% raises every year. I think the future of this space, restaurants, and food is a passion and hobby of my wife and I's, is, like he said, a much smaller footprint. I do not think the need for Class A real estate is going to be as important anymore. The walk-by foot traffic is going to be not as important anymore. People are going to be more destination to go to a restaurant because they're not going to just be chitter-chattering on the side of the road because of a fear of an illness. I don't think we're going to be shaking people's hands anymore. We're certainly not going to be talking with strangers as we walk down the street. It's going to be a small footprint with a drive-through. That small footprint is going to have an emphasis on outside seating. Your mobile capacity, your digital capacity better be very robust and deep with its offering. The curbside has got to be like that. I mean, curbside has got to be as efficient as your point of sale inside your spot. I think you're going to see more mobile and ghost kitchens where a business can operate out of a kitchen and maybe they share the overhead with 2 or 3 other ones. And it's going to be a restaurant on this damn thing where people, like you're buying a shirt from Amazon, you say, I want that burger. No, I don't want that fries. Yes, let's upcharge a vanilla milkshake. Sure, I'll take some pickles, and I'm going to take a side of apple cake or a slice of apple pie. And it's going to be a retail experience. You'll have your order saved on your phone so you can repeat and do it again. If I could offer any perspective to anyone that's watching this show that's in this space, please, dear Lord, please, dear Lord, please, dear Lord, invest into a mobile platform. Rob Schilling coming up here. I'm rigging Rob Schilling as we speak to see if we can get some clarity in City Hall. In fact, we have Rob on the line now, Judah Wickower, who's our director. Rob, you're live across the I Love CVille network. We have you live across many Facebook pages on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. A lot of people watching you right now. First, why don't we get an introduction to Rob Schilling, the man? I think everyone in this community knows who you are. But for those that don't, how about an introduction to you, Rob?
All right. Hey, first of all, Jerry, thanks so much for inviting me to come on the program today. You know, this bothers me. I have been a resident of Charlottesville since about 1999. I served on the Charlottesville City Council, the last elected Republican probably in history, from the year 2002 to 2006. And presently, I am hosting the Schilling Show. It's on WINA, and I am there weekdays at noon, and I have been doing that for 13 years. I understand what's going on in this community because I've watched it very closely for a number of years.
He has inner knowledge of the workings at City Hall. I could not think of someone who could offer better perspective than this man on the show. I'm going to get out of your way. When we were doing this show on Friday, I'm getting text messages from people that have desks inside City Hall saying Richardson is resigning. Please shine a spotlight that's happening in our city because we are afraid to talk or we're unwilling to talk because we get a paycheck from the city itself. Anywhere you want to go on Richardson's resignation.
Okay, this was not a surprise to me in that I don't think he ever should have come here in the first place. I like some of the things he had to say in his open interviews. Particularly, this was a man, in contrast to the other 2 finalists, Jerry, who was willing to say that Charlottesville should not be overtaxed, that people here ought to be concerned about the tax bills going too high. And I know that didn't sit well with the mayor because I asked her about it personally. So I had a propensity to like him, if nothing else, for that statement alone. But I also saw, as he came here, as many others have before him in various high-level positions of Charlottesville, that I believed he would come to regret this decision because this is an impossible place to work. When I say it's impossible, it's because the lines of demarcation between the different organizations within the city and the leadership of the city are very confused. And there are people who are constantly vying for power, whether it's within the city council, the mayor, the chief of police, the city manager, department heads. This is going on, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. I think the straw that broke the camel's back, at least from my perspective, was this very strange statement that was released by Dr. Richardson on the 22nd 27th of August, where he basically said, and he admitted, we've been letting lawlessness go on in this community, streets blocked off, protesters when they don't have permits, and we're just not going to go down that road anymore. And I thought, okay, great. Finally, somebody has come forward, who is a spine.
Call from Virginia.
And I'm sorry about that. Somebody who has a spine, and basically who says, okay, we're not going to tolerate the foolishness anymore. Within one day, Jerry, all of a sudden this protest happens, and the Charlottesville Police Department not only disregarded what Dr. Richardson said, they were actually facilitating the closing of streets. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. I think it emasculated him, to use that phrase, because I think he looked foolish, he looked weak and spineless, and when I saw that happen, I thought, I don't see how this guy's going to continue to work here much longer. I don't know what happened there. I have my suspicions, but I think that was the final straw for him.
We have, in a budget deficit, the city at minimum on October 1 is going to pay 3 city managers high dollar. We don't know what it's going to do, and I've been asking, maybe you have some knowledge on this. I don't know what Mo Jones is doing. Okay, so let's just say it's at minimum 3. We're in a budget deficit where we cannot afford to pay teachers, EMTs, police, fire and rescue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The concept of paying 3 individuals obscene amounts of money during a budget deficit, your thoughts on that topic and who it reflects on the most?
Okay, so this is a real problem, but the biggest problem is do you hear one single city councilor raising a peep about this, saying a single word that we should not be doing this? They're all on board. They're all complicit in this, and they don't say a word. What I'm looking for is for some person to stand up and say, this is ridiculous and no more. We're not going to be giving in to people and bargaining on the way out because we made a bad decision going in. We're going to stand up and take it ourselves. We'll take the blame. We made a bad decision, but we're firing this guy. We're not altering his contract. There's something else going on here. But the problem is you've got 5 city councilors and not a one of them is willing to criticize what's going on here. You and I can talk all day long. That's not going to change anything. The electorate in Charlottesville, unfortunately, is not paying careful enough attention. The vast majority of them, they don't know what's going on here. So what are we supposed to do? Well, we got to talk about it like we're talking about it right now, and I appreciate the opportunity. But until you get a person who's sitting in a city council diocese who's willing to speak out against the 4 others, you're not going to see any changes in City Hall. It's going to be business as usual, despite the fact that they count, Jerry, that you and I are going to forget this in a few months and we'll just be back to where it was before.
He's so right. They are taking us for granted. They literally are snubbing their noses at us and saying, we're going to forget about this as the news cycle changes. And it's exasperating the problem, and it's terribly unfortunate. I watch these meetings as closely as you do. I clearly see one person controlling the mood, the temperature, leveraging fear to get her point across, her policies across, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I made this analogy earlier in the show, and it's not an analogy that's unique to me. It's an analogy we all know. We have a city manager that's the CEO of the city, and we have 5 people on council that are essentially the board of directors. One of them is the chairwoman and Mayor Walker, okay? I'm just utterly shocked that we are not holding her at a different level of accountability. We got 3 city managers getting money. We got a police chief that left and sprinted out of town right after August 12th. We have a police civilian review board that couldn't get along with the mayor, that's trying to hire independent counsel to maintain their autonomy. We got teachers that cannot be paid appropriately. I mean, we have a fire chief that got the hell out of Dodge. I mean, this is just off the top of my head, Rob. You know this a hell of a lot better than I do. Anywhere you want to go on these topics.
Okay, so first of all is the issue of funding. There are slush pots all over the city. They tuck money away. When I was on city council and tried to get information about all the various places, Jerry, that there was money tucked away, and I was getting tips from inside City Hall, they couldn't even tell me or refuse to tell me as a city councilor. When somebody wants something to happen in the city manager knows where to find the money. There are pots of money that can be tapped into. Now, I'm not saying it solves our budget problem, but what I'm saying is They know how to do it. The problem is the relationship between the city manager and city council. The city manager serves at the whim of city council and at the pleasure of city council. If they don't like him, he's gone. So whenever the city council goes to the city manager and says, we want money for X, Y, or Z, the city manager better darn well find it. And if he doesn't, he finds himself on the short end of the stick with councilors. This is how it works here. People don't realize that. So that's problem number one. There are pots of money all over the place. There is not good accounting in the city of Charlottesville. In other words, there's a lot of money that just goes and rolls around from year to year, or let's take it out of here and put it over here. I do agree we have a budget crisis, but the way that they've been solving the problem over the past many years is relying on real estate tax increases, and the goose that laid the golden egg has now been killed. I had an email today from a person who's very well affiliated with the downtown mall who said, I took a walk down the mall the other day and I'm seeing all these vacancies. The restaurants are struggling to stay in business. Look, you at some point run out of money. And if they're waiting for the federal government to bail us out through the state funds, that may be a long wait. Maybe that's the end game. Maybe they think we'll see a change in administration, a change in policy that we'll all just get federal dollars and pay everybody off, and then we won't have a problem. But for the city to look elsewhere to solve its budget problems is wrong-headed. Jerry, I've gone through the city budget many times over the years. I did what was called the red pen report, and I did another one last year in the city budget. Me sitting there for about 45 minutes with a figurative red pen looking at the budget, I could easily cut out 10, 15, $20 million without too much trouble. It's just that there's no political will to do it. So they're going to keep on getting the golden egg from the goose until the goose is dead.
Rob Schilling, guys, The Schilling Show. More questions for Rob. We have questions coming in. This guy, his show, extremely popular, and I see that because my messages are blowing up here. I will get to these questions here in a matter of moments. Rob, okay, why don't I get to these questions? And this is going to come up later in the show. Jerry, please ask Rob about your story of 717 students leaving Albemarle County schools. We all know and read the story that they get $3,000 per student. So as you did the math in the beginning of the show, that's over $2 million, close to $2.2 million the county will not have. What are Rob's thoughts on that story and thoughts on school in totality?
Okay, I have been very outspoken as a critic of government schools for many years. I just released a story about the Albemarle County government schools teaching that the Constitution was founded on racism and inequity. So if you're teaching a generation of students to hate the place they are, is it any wonder that we're seeing violence breaking out across America after a generation or more has been taught this is a horrible place? All the while, people of color primarily are trying to bust down the doors to get into this country. So it doesn't make sense to me that this is such a horrible place that everybody else in the world wants to come here. That's number one. Number two, it is about the money. We've made great sacrifices in our own family to homeschool my 3 children, and I will never regret that. My wife has a PhD in education at the University of Virginia. She could certainly be earning easily $150,000 or more a year as a principal at a local school or anything else in this field. She's an expert. We have had her at home teaching our kids ever since my son was ready to start school, and we continue in that mode. So I'm saying it not to pat myself on the back, but to say it is a sacrifice, but it's so worth it. You've got to get your kids out of these places. And the reckoning, the financial reckoning that's referenced here that you made on these millions of dollars walking out, I'm wondering what they're doing with all the money. So they have this huge budget. They have all these buildings to maintain. They've got janitors. They've got bus drivers, and everybody's on reduced hours. I had reports from school teachers that were working a minimum amount of time over the last quarter, maybe 3 or 4 hours a week, and getting paid for a full-time job. One of them said, hey, I'm just going to move down to Richmond and continue to do my job because I can. I really don't have a lot of duties. And these are reports from teachers inside the system. There needs to be a total accounting if we are going to run these government schools, and until we get school choice where people could decide with their own money where they want to send their kids. And if they want to send them to the government schools, that's okay, but you shouldn't force me to pay for it. Then there would be an accounting. Then people could say, hey, I'm either going to support this or I'm not. Competition would force them to get better, and they would have to stop all this foolish wasting of money. So you're right, there's going to be a big hole in the budget, but what about all that extra money that's slushing around? I am fearful, Jerry, that they're finding ways to just spend the money because at the end of the year, they don't want to say we have all the money left over. Like any other government organization, they want to be able to justify their budget year after year, even though right now the emperor does have no clothes.
I think he's exactly right, because if the schools don't spend the money and they have the money in reserves at the end of the year, then that is justification for not giving them more money the next year. They need to spend the money to maintain the cash flow coming in. More questions coming in. Rob, you're a popular guy. More questions coming in for Rob. Jerry, bring this topic up with Rob, please. The topic you talked about with John Blair being an interim city manager and with Robertson being the interim city lawyer, and the fact that Mayor Walker negotiating those contracts on their own. How can these two ever speak out against her or do something that she does not want to do when she's personally negotiating the contracts herself? Now, his website, Schilling Show, and go online. It's loaded with information. Okay, it's loaded for information. That's where I found this story. Okay, genuinely straightforward. That's where I found it. That topic for you, Rob, it's a great question from a viewer.
Okay, you're getting right to the heart of the matter, and thank you for the question. It's perfect. I want to go back to a little story I could tell you about my time on City Council, and I remember this night very clearly. So I entered into Charlottesville City Council as a total outsider, coming here from California, been here for about 3 years, knew relatively nothing about the area, only that I had integrity and wanted to help people out who were looking for some common sense there. I was brand new to City Council, and they don't really bring you up to speed. At least they didn't bring me up to speed, so I didn't really understand how these things worked. We're sitting in one of our private sessions, okay, when the public is not allowed, discussing things that are strictly regulated by law. And I'm sitting around the table with these four city councilors and also the city manager, Gary O'Connell at the time, and the city attorney at the time, Craig Brown. And so I'm listening to the conversation that's going on, and it was an eminent domain conversation, as I recall, and these counselors were going way outside of the bounds of what we were supposed to talk about, just thinking that no one would say anything. And I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting for the city attorney, Craig Brown, to say something, and he said nothing. And after about 10 minutes of this, I finally raised my voice up to the other counselors, and I looked over at the city attorney, and I said, "Hey, Craig, is this something we ought to be talking about?" And he kind of hemmed and hawed, and he said, "Well, you know, now that you mention it, we probably shouldn't. I think it's outside of the bounds of what we're legally allowed." If I hadn't said a word, this would have gone on. And not only for that meeting, for the entire 4 years of my city council service. This is how it is. The city attorney, just like the city manager, works at the pleasure of the city council. The city attorney is very, very hesitant to tell the council they're doing something wrong, even though any city attorney with integrity would do that. And that's the problem we faced then. It's the same problem we have now, Jerry. You're right on target, and the concerns of the person listening right now are right on target. No, they're not going to. They love that paycheck. Look, Blair's making $166,000 a year, plus rich benefits, plus a 10% kicker for taking this job. Lisa Robertson is probably making a little less than that, but also gets a 10% kicker. They're not going to rock the boat because they'll be out the door if they do.
Rob Schilling, crushing it right today on the I Love CVille show. I'm going to throw this one. More questions coming in for Rob Schilling here. Rob Schilling calls it how he sees it, and I respect that perspective. Jerry, you mentioned that John Blair lives in Albemarle County. I thought that was not allowed. I will emphasize this. He's the interim city manager because he is the interim title, the Albemarle County location, not as... a full-time city manager has to live in the city of Charlottesville. Interim does not have to live in the city of Charlottesville. But this question is coming in here. If John Blair lives in Albemarle County and he is now the city manager, and we see that this history of, I'm reading verbatim, and we see that the history of city managers in Charlottesville is a choppy one, which city manager from outside this area will legitimately take this job, knowing that we churn through them very quickly? And then the final part of the question, are we to expect that John is going to become the full-time city manager just like Mo Jones became?
Okay, I don't think John Blair would take this job. I think he's smarter than that. He sees what a corrupt and crooked place this is, and he knows that this is getting him brownie points. It's very interesting. First of all, they didn't choose one of the assistant city managers, which they've always looked to in the past. One of them came here at the direct behest of Dr. Richardson, but another one didn't. I don't think they could convince them. I want to go back to Mike Murphy, who took the interim position last time, and the council was desperate. Nobody wanted this job. Finally, Mike Mike Murphy, who also lives in Albemarle County, wrote his own ticket, and he got a sweetheart deal that they tried to keep a secret until we got a hold of the information and released it, but they tried to keep a secret about what his terms were. And basically the ticket he wrote himself was, hey, I can come in here and then I can retire around the age of 50, which is far before anybody else is able to retire, with full benefits. And if I don't like working here, I can just leave and get paid off. And as you discussed earlier, he's still getting paid through the end of October, I think. So this is the way it rolls here. I don't think that this guy wants to come in here, Blair. I think he knows it's trouble. I think he's earning his brownie points. He'll probably get a payback on the other side for bailing them out. But I don't think there's any way in the world that they're going to bring him up in that position, because I frankly don't think he wants it. And also, he's an attorney. He's not a city manager. I don't know that he's had training to be a city manager and has the degrees that they're looking for that they would want in a qualified candidate. So I don't think that's going to happen. I hope I got to the question. Was there another part of that?
You did. You answered it well. All right, a couple more questions for you here. Rob Schilling of The Schilling Show. How do we fix it? Rob, this is what I'm seeing. We have morale is low. Mm-hmm. We have vacancies that are close to 20% on the Charlottesville downtown mall. We have lodging, retail, and restaurant taxable revenues down. We have teachers struggling to learn from a virtual standpoint or teach from a virtual standpoint. How do we fix this, Rob Schilling?
Okay, there's a number of components here. First of all, the structure of the government is problematic. We need people that are more representative of their neighborhoods and areas. And the Charlottesville City Council fought me on this big time, but I was able to at least convene an elections task force to look at changing the representation of city council to district-based, like Albemarle County does, and like most places in America do. The reason we have at-large elections is that they were racially exclusive, and I go into great detail. You can read about this at shillingshow.com. But I've done the research on this. The Justice Department went all across the South and destroyed these systems in most places like Richmond and Petersburg and other places because they knew what they were all about. Now, if you look at the situation right now, the reason that a lot of people have a hard time running and winning in Charlottesville because they have to run citywide, and the overwhelming participation of people from other parts of the city can defeat a candidate who could win in his home turf or her home turf. So first of all, we need to change the way councilors are elected. I'd like to see more councilors. There was a time in Charlottesville where we had 12 people. They were called aldermen back at the turn of the last century. During the Byrd era, and I've done all this research and again documented it, they knocked this down to 3 for a very brief period of time, from 12 down to 3 people governing the city. It wound up at 5, which we have now, but I'd like to see maybe 7 people. I'd like to see them represented from districts. They would have a much better time of getting voices on this council that are actually encouraged by their local community to serve the needs of the local community, and maybe an at-large member as well. But I think we need a structural change. The other problem is that people don't pay attention, and this one is harder to solve. I remember walking down the mall when I was campaigning for re-election in 2006, and I remember talking to a person who had been in Charlottesville for a few years. And she said, I'm a Democrat, and I came here, and what I wanted to do was just vote for Democrats. And she said, I know you're a Republican, and I don't really like that, but I do like what you've done here. But she said, it took me 4 years for my eyes to open what was going on here in Charlottesville, to understand what was happening with this local government and why having just one political party represented was problematic. She said, I can't vote for you the second time because we're moving. And what that opened my eyes to was the fact that we have a big churn here. And there are some people who start wising up after they've been here for a while. But due to the nature of the university and the people that come in and out and in and out and in and out, by the time they're really aware of what's going on here politically, they might be leaving the community and a new person comes in. I'm not saying that a Republican has to be the one to solve the problems. What I'm saying is we need some independence, some independent thinkers, and people who will come in here and be representatives of their areas or neighborhoods, whether they're Democrats, Independents, or Republicans, who will think independently and act independently, and that's going to be a tougher nut to crack.
That take right there was fire. That take was amazing right there. Rob Schilling, guys. Last question, a final word, anywhere you want to go. You are dropping knowledge on this show. Guys, we are not going to get to all these questions here. I apologize. It's not that I don't want to get to your questions here. I have another guest coming up here. Rob, anywhere you want to go, any topic you want to cover.
Okay, so we've got a real problem here, and I think the first thing is for people to get involved and to get organized. You know, nobody can be successful, and it doesn't feel good to be an island. And so I get outreach from people over the years, and most recently because of all the things going on in our community, who are really concerned about linking up. So I think what you're doing here, Jerry, is a great thing because it allows people to share ideas in a safe forum, and also to find out that they're not the only person in this community that thinks like this. It's really unfortunate, but there's a lot of things happening here that don't get covered by the mainstream media, things that you and I covered that are ignored by the daily newspaper, ignored by the television stations, even ignored by the weekly newspaper sometimes because it doesn't fit their agenda. So first of all, people, be encouraged. There are others who share your frustrations. You need to find a way to connect with them. And if it's on Facebook and you're looking here at I Love CVille, or if you're looking at the Schilling Show on Facebook and seeing other people commenting, reach out to them either publicly or on the back end through an instant message. Say, hey, let's talk about this a little further. Let's establish our relationship. Let's trade emails. Let's get together when we can do that. And let's find other like-minded people. And whether that means we're ultimately going to put a political candidacy up, or we're going to work together on a certain issue. Look, when we got the elected school board passed here in Charlottesville in 2005, everybody said it was impossible. But I had a dream to do this. And I got together with a guy by the name of Jeff Rossman, who was a very liberal University of Virginia professor. But we had in mind that this was a common goal. And there was a whole lot of people who happen to be Democrats, some Republicans, but mostly Democrats, who work side by side with other people who shared this idea. We might have disagreed on everything else, and maybe some of those people didn't vote for me, even though they liked the work I did to get an elected school board here, but we had a common purpose. And so the thing I want to leave your listeners with today and your viewers with is that we need to get together on the issues where we can agree and work together, even if on the next issue we're on opposing sides.
Thank you. You killed it, per usual. You always kill it. Thank you kindly. You have a good afternoon.
I appreciate it very much. Welcome anytime on my program, and I just thank all the people who participated today, and I thank you especially for what you're doing and for inviting me on your program.
Rob. Thank you, Rob. All right, Rob Schilling, boys
Thanks,
and
Jerry.
girls. He's fantastic. Let's get Keith Smith in the mix. Judah Wickower, I'm reaching out to Keith Smith. Keith Smith has a lot of perspective he can offer. Keith Smith also has perspective that he can offer from a state code standpoint in reference to public bodies and closed-door sessions. Keith, welcome to the show.
Poof.
Thank you for joining us. I know the show is on fire today, dude. It's on fire. Okay, so this guy is a Renaissance man. Keith Smith, a Marine. Keith Smith, a real estate agent of 30-plus years. Keith Smith, a loving husband of a beautiful, intelligent woman named Yona Smith. Keith Smith, 2 fantastic daughters. Keith Smith rides his bike almost every day now to stay in great shape. Keith Smith also has a problem, and that problem is he's a volaholic. He volunteers on a hell of a lot of boards. This guy is nuanced and understands many things that I do not, including state codes and references to public bodies and closed sessions. Keith, educate all of us on any of this topic material, specifically closed sessions, state boards, public sessions, anywhere you want to go.
So before I do that, one thing you missed is I'm a friend of Jerry Miller.
Thanks. I'm
Great
your
show
friend
on
too.
Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm still on a high from it. It meant the world to me. Anybody who didn't get a chance to watch the Real Talk show on Friday, watch it. Go to the portion. You'll find out the real Jerry Miller out there. So I just wanted to give you kudos to that. So look, I posted in the feed. I mean, how does one follow these 2 dudes? Right? I mean, how does this happen? And if you can't get Rob on his own show on I Love Charlottesville Network, I'm going to go grab him by his ponytail and drag him in there and go ahead and do it, because I think there's a show happening right there on that. So look, so when Rob kind of alluded to some of this stuff, and he was spot on. I was taking notes on this. So this example of his, that when he was in closed session and they started talking about something other than the topic. So the way this works is, the state code says, is if we're going to come into closed session, we're a public body, we have to announce it in open session. It has to be for a very specific reason. Contract negotiations, real estate transaction. It's very specific. Then you go into closed session. So that means the public leaves, right? And by the way, it's not required to take minutes. And oh, by the way, it's not subject to FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests. But what Rob articulated was spot on. you can't talk about anything other than that. And once you do, frankly, the county attorney or city attorney is supposed to go, time out, we can't do this, and stop it. So I'm glad to hear that Rob spoke up and did that. I will tell you, I work in all the jurisdictions in my volaholic problem. And every, Fluvanna County, Fred Payne is the county's attorney. I've sat in meetings. He'll just stop it. Guys, time out. You're violating the law. Everybody goes, oh, I'm sorry. Because let's face it, we're not nuanced folks in these meetings. And that's the reason he's there. He or she is the expert to go ahead and do that. So it's very important that happens. They go in, they have the conversation. They can't take any action. They can't make any decisions. It's just a conversation, right? No minutes are taken, or they can be. It's at the discretion of the chairperson or the mayor in this case. And then they come out of public session. And then if there's a vote, then they have to publicly talk about that. And then when they come out, they have to certify. Mr. Schilling, when he came out of that public meeting, he had to certify, every single one by voice vote has to certify, we did not speak about anything other than this one topic. So my hat's off to him. That was a good catch. And, in my opinion, I know Mr. Blair well. I've sat in multiple meetings with Mr. Blair. I could not think of a better choice of somebody to do this than Mr. Blair. He will keep the city council straight and narrow. I think bringing in the city attorney, regardless of how it happened, is probably a stroke of genius. It takes the political. He has certain, he's at the bar, so he has certain responsibilities to speak up when somebody's violating the law. So, I also know him because I've worked with him across the table on land trust issues. He's all about trying to move the ball forward and getting people educated. So I'm super excited about it. How we got here and why we got here, I'll leave for somebody else to find out. But I'm actually feel good about it, to be honest with you.
I'm going to say it again, and I echo what he said. John Blair is first-class people. John Blair is integrity, honor, like a first-class, honorable guy. My favorite city employee is John Blair. I'm going to throw this to you, Keith. Your thoughts when Dr. Richardson announced his retirement. What was going through Keith Smith's mind?
I was like, wow. What on our show on Friday, we bumped out Fox News, right? Think about that. We bumped out Fox News for our little show, and then I'm watching this live. Look how awesome this is that Jerry's getting the scoop in front of all the people. As far as changeover and all that stuff, this may come across wrong, and I may get myself in a little bit of trouble with this, but I think Jesus Christ himself could do that job. So it's a hard job to do because of who you're dealing with on the public body. But I'm not going to go pointing fingers. We talk about this all the time. But I'm moving forward. I'm happy that Mr. Blair is the guy that's going to help move this forward. I'm excited and positive that we might actually get a city manager that is really going to be able to move the ball forward and have a set of cojones to stand up when he or she needs to stand up.
Well said. Well said. The market, real estate market. We're already reading reports. I'm already hearing from people at both Albemarle County that work for Albemarle and work for the city of Charlottesville, and both of my multiple contacts are saying we are going to see undoubtedly an increase in real estate taxes.
It's not going to. It will happen. It's absolutely going to happen. All the 6 jurisdictions, at the end of the day, most of their revenue comes in from real estate taxes, right? So the perfect balance, if you talk to somebody like Neil and some of these economic development directors and all these kind of great stuff, the perfect balance is like a 70-30 split, right? 30% should come from commercial taxes, and 30% from commercial taxes, 70 from residential. Most jurisdictions, the one I'm sitting at the moment, is 97-98%. So at the end of the day, it's coming from rooftops. That's just the way it is. So it will go up. To be honest with you, I've been doing this game for 33 years now. Never seen it go down. Right? Never seen it go down.
If it goes up, what's the cause and effect of it going up?
Yeah, so it depends on how much and what's going to happen here, and I'm not really prepared to pull the chapter and verse, but I remember that there's some. I believe they cannot raise it over a certain percentage year over year, and I'm sorry, I can't remember that number, and some other expert on the show, we can do that, and we can surely pull that in. But 10% sticks in my head for some reason, that we can't go over any higher than 10% year over year. I may be wrong. Maybe that's a rate thing, but we'll have to look into it. But that's stuck in this little noggin here for some reason on that end of it. But yeah, we'll talk about this on the show. As long as interest rates stay down, if tax rate goes up $50 a month, at 2% to 3% interest, how much of a cup of coffee is that, right? We go up 6, 7, 8, 9. We start climbing back up to when I bought my first house of 18%. $50 at 18% is a big number.
Amen. Keith Smith is the star of Real Talk. His show airs Tuesdays and Fridays at 10:15 a.m. on the I Love CVille network. Keith Smith, thoughts on tomorrow's show?
Yeah, so we're super excited. We're doing a series on Tuesdays of bringing in local folks. We're going to bring in Johnny Orales, and he is opening up, and his brother Steve is opening up a new restaurant in Science Crossroads. El Mariachi. I don't know if I got that right. My New York accent may screw that up a little bit, but he's going to call in, and he's going to be super excited about that. Just a little quick real estate thing, right? Because as you guys were chatting, I was looking here. Louisa County, last 90 days. I'll just go down to the crux of it. The median sales price this year, 2020 was 346. Same 90 days in 19 was 312. So we're up 34 grand, and that's just Science Crossroads, because that's all we tap into in our MLS system. So it went up 34 grand year over year, same last 90 days. Same amount of days on market, by the way. And as we're sitting right now, Louisa County has 40 units in pending. So, the guys are smart move. We talk about this on the show all the time. When's our next crozet? I've always preached Science Crossroads is. We'll find out if I'm right. Then on Friday, we're gonna tackle something that I may get myself into a little bit of trouble. But we're gonna talk, will the president election affect real estate? So I've been working on that all week. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to that. This is a Keith and Batman and Robin show, and we're gonna talk about, will the president? No, we're not gonna who should win, who shouldn't win. This is straight. What will it do to the market? So I'm looking forward. I'm
looking forward to that show very much. Keith Smith, the star.
I know you are.
Keith Smith, the star of Real Talk. Real Talk is an insider's guide to real estate, life, and the pursuit of happiness. It's presented by the Yes Team Realtors. The Yes Team Realtors, trusted advisors in the game. Keith and Jonas Smith. Tuesdays and Fridays at 10:15 a.m. on the I Love CVille network. My friend, I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Good luck on the rest of the show, Jerry. Great show today, by the way. Great interviews. I'm sorry you ended up with me as the third seat.
You're the distinguished gentleman, and you're the best. Thank you for joining us, Keith Smith.
See you later.
The guy is the man. Real Talk Tuesdays and Fridays on the I Love CVille network. Guys, get your comments in the comments section. Get your comments in the comments section. If you're watching on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter, I will get to your comments in a matter of moments. Put them in now. Jim Wickower watching the program. Big Jim, hello. Thank you kindly for joining us. I am seeing 9 different states watching the I Love CVille show right now. 9 different states watching the I Love CVille show right now. It's 2:02. That means we legitimately have gone 90 minutes straight on the I Love CVille show without a commercial break or stopping, and I still have significant information to relay to you on this fantastic network. J-Dubs, take a look at panel number 2 if you could, my friend. Let's talk Let's talk the schools headline. Get the Albemarle County Schools headline up first if you could, J-Dubs. 717 students due to COVID-19. Look at the screen. Look at the screen. 717 students. Hasta luego. Peace out. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more, no more, no more. From Albemarle County Schools, 717. The Commonwealth provides $3,000 per kid. 3,000 times 717, ladies and gentlemen. $2,151,000. Those 717 kids will cost Albemarle County Schools. Where they are going, it's a mix. Some to private schools, some to home schools, some to learning pods in the cul-de-sac, on the back deck, in the parking lot or the soccer field. It's a mix. The key number is just short of $2.2 million. The county is going to be short from, the school system is going to be short from a money standpoint with its operating budget. That is a lot of money. And then it leads me to this very question. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? COVID-19 has created and magnified and driven momentum behind so many different collapses. We've seen COVID-19 drive momentum and magnify the collapse of retail. We've seen COVID-19 drive momentum and magnify the collapse of restaurants. We've seen COVID-19 drive momentum and magnify the collapse of hospitality, music, weddings, and events. We've seen COVID-19 drive momentum and magnify depression and anxiety. Will COVID-19 drive momentum and magnify the collapse of public school systems from east to west coast, from Texas to Alaska? That is the question you have to ask. Is the concept of learning in an antiquated building with poor ventilation that is frankly not as cleaned as well as it should, that costs a hell of a lot of money to maintain, is that the future of learning? Or is the future of learning on this, through these, at someone's home, at a kid's desk, at their house? And if that is the future, much like Harvard University, yes, Harvard University, announcing that it's going to go virtual completely, and it's not going to offer a reduction in tuition for its students, is that going to trickle down to high school, middle, and elementary schools moving forward? And if it does it create the collapse of public school systems, much like retail, restaurants, wedding, events, and colleges? Only time will tell, but as a betting man, I would say we're heading in that direction. The next headline, we predicted this on this program. The UVA-Virginia Tech game postponed over the weekend on Saturday. I'm frankly thinking this game will not happen. UVA is now going to open up the season against Duke University, the Blue Devils from Durham. There currently is not an open slot on the schedule for UVA Virginia Tech. If it does happen, it's going to happen on December 12th, in the midst of flu season. The Commonwealth Cup, a clash of epic proportions that means so many to folks in the Roanoke Valley, the New River Valley, and certainly in Charlottesville and Central Virginia. The likelihood of this game happening is now under 50%. Boys and girls, I'm a God-fearing man. I routinely pray on this program. As a God-fearing man who totally understands the value proposition of college athletics for a town like Charlottesville, Virginia, we are now praying and hoping for the safety of student athletes and praying and hoping for college basketball even happening. Colleges are asking football players to tackle, spit, bleed, and sweat and fall on each other because they make $50 to $60 million for the athletic department. In my book, that's called Indentured Servanthood. In the books of colleges across America, that's called Earning Your Scholarship, because you make us money. The likelihood of us getting to the Commonwealth clash on December 12th is below 50%. The University of Virginia, the next headline, put it on screen, put it on screen, put it on screen. The 26th ranked university across America from a public school standpoint, the number 4 ranked university from a public school standpoint. UCLA, UC Berkeley, and Michigan and Ann Arbor, the top 3 from a public school standpoint. Virginia in the 4 slot. We'll see if those rankings continue, and we will see how those rankings change as universities and colleges adapt and get ready, the word of 2020, pivot to a virtual learning environment. Those rankings moving forward, you heard it here, those rankings moving forward, the best colleges in America will undoubtedly change as colleges and universities have success and failures with online learning. The ones that do it well will climb. The ones that do it poorly will fall, and that's just freaking facts. The next headline, get it on screen, get it on screen. More layoffs at the Charlottesville Daily Progress. The parent company behind the Daily Progress, the parent company behind Roanoke Times, and the parent company behind the Richmond Times Dispatch, Lee Enterprises, is stripping the parts of newsrooms across its company, much like a car robber takes a vehicle to a chop shop to disguise the theft of the automobile. The unfortunate aspect of stripping a newsroom from its most valuable parts, its most valuable commodities, its human capital, is us, the community, suffers. We are at a time in Charlottesville and Central Virginia. We are at a time in America. We are at a time in the world, September 4th, 2020, where COVID-19 is kicking us in the balls. It's magnifying and expanding the wealth gap. It's exasperating social justice. It's creating unrest in main streets from San Diego to Charlottesville, from El Paso to Anchorage, Alaska. And our daily newspapers and our traditional media are falling and dying and being stripped of its human capital, basically preventing the news to get to us. That's why I feel responsibility to deliver an expanded version of the I Love CVille show that is now 100 minutes in without commercial break. That is why I will run for office. I am not spineless. I will speak up. I am not afraid of the threat, the hollow threat of being called something because of my skin color. I see what's happening, and I will deliver truth to you. The next headline, boys and girls, comes from Wall Street. Oracle is buying Chinese-owned TikTok. President Trump set a deadline for this transaction to happen or TikTok would be banned in America. Oracle, not Walmart. Oracle, not Microsoft. Going to be the new owner of Chinese-owned TikTok, a social media app that is as ubiquitous with 8-year-old to 18-year-olds as Facebook and Instagram are with millennials and older. We'll follow that transaction closely. That app influences the next generation, undoubtedly. Judah Wickhauer, my friend, my colleague, my brother. 10 black starting quarterbacks in the National Football League on week 1. Look at the screen. Look at the screen. An NFL record for week 1. For African Americans under center in the National Football League. Cam Newton, New England Patriots. Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs. Lamar Jackson, Baltimore Ravens. Russell Wilson, Seattle Seahawks. Teddy Bridgewater, Carolina Panthers. Dak Prescott, Dallas Cowboys. Tyrod Taylor, San Diego Chargers. Deshaun Watson, Houston Texans. Dwayne Haskins, the Washington Football Team. And Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. In a time where we have significant social unrest, We should champion, spotlight, and scream from the tips of the Blue Ridge Mountains that we're making progress in one of the most recognizable brands in America, the National Football League, with 10 African Americans under center. Hooray, hooray, hooray. The next headline, my friends, comes from the Big Apple. I have ties to the Big Apple. My wife worked on Wall Street at Blackstone for 8 years and lived in the Upper East. Because of her, I fell in love with the city that never sleeps. New York Sports Club has filed for bankruptcy. New York Sports Club has filed for bankruptcy. Look at the screen, look at the screen, look at the screen. An iconic brand in the Big Apple cannot pay and cover its overhead. Gold's Gym following suit. My friends, 24-hour fitness as well. The gym concept of going into a building and sweating and breathing and spitting particles in the air is fragile and vulnerable at best. And that devastates me because I am at AC downtown 5 days a week. Viewer comments, your thoughts, put them in the comments section and I will get to them now. Put your comments in the comments section. I will get to them now. Judah, let's give some love to Scott Wagner of Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. Dr. Wagner changing people's lives through physical therapy, sports medicine, and chiropractic care. Scott Wagner of Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. Who's got your back? Dr. Wagner. Dr. Wagner has your back. Wow, we have a lot of comments. Barbara Lundgren, we love you, Barbara Lundgren. We were going to get to you. Francis Butler Morris, Jerry, you were absolutely correct today. Brian Federico, great interview, Rick Postle. Iris Luck, Rick Postle was amazing. Tim Ryan, Rick Postle, you killed that interview. Chris from Crozet, Jerry, bring Rick back on the show. Liz Farmer, what a great show today, so informative. Louise Keller, Jerry, you are my news outlet. Your show was on fire today. Thank you for being the voice of Charlottesville, Virginia. Barbara Lundgren, how many students have dropped out of public schools due to Wi-Fi issues at home and are not attending school whatsoever right now? Very good point. Barbara Lundgren, the fairy godmother, the star of the Virginia Wedding and Event Showcase, Thursdays at 10:15 a.m. on the I Love CVille network. Colleges are going to see a huge drop in enrollment in 2021, Barbara says. Why would families take the risk of paying full price and then face online classes? Barbara, I would give you a chest bump if I could, but I can't because of COVID. So I'm going to say you're beautiful and intelligent, and I look forward to seeing you on Thursday for the Virginia Wedding and Event Showcase on the I Love CVille network. Sue Martin has a comment. I am hoping Mr. Blair can help bring our city together, make the right decisions regardless of our city mayor's desires. People are fleeing Charlottesville and Albemarle due to the politics and division of our area. We can do so much better than her. Jamie Schwartz, the co-star of Women Changing Our World, Mondays at 10:15 a.m. on the I Love CVille network. The most wonderful family in the world, the Postles. We are lucky to have them as pillars in our community. Way to go, Rick. We love you. Carol Thorpe, thank you for an outstanding interview with Rob Schilling. Please have him back on soon. In your news segment, you were spot on when you accurately criticized Mayor Walker. It is not about race, but incompetence. The only way the public can end her tenure as mayor will be to not re-elect her to council if she runs again next year. Remember that the mayor is selected only by council itself. In addition, I found it odd that none of the assistant city managers were logically moved up to fill Dr. Richardson's vacancy. We can only conclude that none of them wanted to work with Mayor Walker either. This must end before Charlottesville implodes. I'm liking that comment. In fact, I'm hearting that comment right now, Carol Thorpe. I'm giving you a freaking fist bump, Carol Thorpe. Bob Schwartz, who I believe is watching in New York. Fear of bureaucracy that will develop in the future will make change in this community. Keith Smith, it will take a silver buckshot approach and not a silver bullet approach. Great interview with Rick Postle. Amazing. Andre Xavier, great interview, amazing show. I still think the cloud kitchen concept will do well. Me too. Andre Xavier, I think the ghost kitchen is the restaurant model of the future. Man, there are so many freaking comments on today's show. Scott Aaronworth, the Esquire, the attorney from Virginia Beach. Jerry Miller, you need to run for governor. Forget the city, run for governor. Kelly Jackson, co-star of Women Changing Our World. Mondays at 10:15 a.m. on the I Love CVille network. Move back into the city of Charlottesville from Albemarle County, and please be the new mayor of Charlottesville. I got my beautiful better half. That's the last straw. She's amazing. She's the backbone. She's the sunshine. She's the rock. She's the foundation of our family. She's at home, raising, nurturing, and taking care of the most important person in our lives, our son, Trey. We're talking about this. What a time. What a time. Eventually, if the dysfunction, if the piss poor policies, eventually, if the lack of communication, eventually, as executives and police chiefs and city managers and city attorneys and as fire chiefs sprint for the exit in Charlottesville, eventually, we need to hold the chairwoman of the board, the mayor of this fine city, accountable. Because in any other world that I'm a part of, the buck would stop and fall at the feet of number one. My name is Jerry Miller. This is the I Love CVille show. Keep it running. Judah, keep it running. Keep it going.